Hey there, comic book community. My name is Joe, and you're watching 360 Comics. Reprints, facsimiles, definitely a great way for publishers to make some money off their back catalog of intellectual property. But what does it do for the hobby itself? And what does it do for each member, each different type of collector within the community? We'll talk about all that and more today. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, now is the time to do so because we're giving away this Incredible Hulk number 377, the first appearance of Professor Hulk, as part of our 1,500 subscriber giveaway. All you got to do is hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up for a like, and leave a comment down below. That'll get you one entry to the giveaway, and you can go check out our other videos from March and April, and it'll go all the way until we hit 1,500 subscribers. Every video you like and comment on is an additional entry, so maximize your chance of winning by checking out all of those videos. Make sure you turn notifications on so you don't miss anything. Also, check us out on Instagram and whatnot, where we do weekly sales. In fact, I'm doing one on each platform this weekend. Before we hop right into talking about reprints and facsimiles, I want to differentiate them from second, third, fourth, etc. printings of books that are coming out currently or have come out in the past. I kind of separate, at least in my opinion, those second printings from reprints. They're a little bit different. Second, third, etc. printings, I'll call them additional printings. They generally come out within a few months, if not within a year or so, of the first printing of the book. They, in my opinion, are not really reprints, although they are a reprinting. But I just separate the two in my head, and maybe you guys agree with that, maybe you don't. But I see reprints as things that come out at least a year, if not several years or several decades later. I don't really see them as the same thing because, if it's part of a current run, it's a little bit different, an issue coming out rather than coming out much later. Now, recently we had Something is Killing the Children go to an 8th printing, and those did come out over a year afterwards. But they came out shortly thereafter, the 7th and 6th and 5th printing and so on and so forth. So, even though that was more than a year, I consider those additional printings. Whereas, if they reprinted issue number 1 10 years from now, I would call that a reprint or a facsimile. So just to differentiate those two things. And we're also in a little bit going to actually differentiate how I see reprints versus facsimiles. But let's first get into what I think these reprinting of comic books do for members of the community, specifically each of the 4 different categories of collectors, which we'll go over in detail. First up, I want to talk about the pure collector. This is someone who collects comic books for the love of collecting. They're not really interested in the financial aspect of it, whether it be speculating or investing. They're probably a reader of comic books too, but not necessarily. They just do it for the emotional love of the hobby. And these are great. These are great for people that are in that position because they're just affordable copies of books that they might not otherwise be able to afford. For this, for example, here, this Tales of Suspense number 39, the first appearance of Iron Man, an astronomically expensive book. Most copies are, in the 5-figure range, even in lower grades. So this book, obviously, not only very hard to find, but very expensive to obtain. If you want to fill in your collection a little bit and you want to have this book to, be a placeholder, you can get this for, cover price $3.99. This came out a couple years ago, I believe. And, I picked some copies up because these are just great, placeholders. Not only placeholders, but they're just interesting pieces to look at as well. You can check out the inside of the book, what it was like, back in the 50s or 60s, depending on how old. This one's from the 60s, obviously, a Silver Age book. And they're great to hold places, and not even necessarily for books this old, because we've also got some newer ones like this Edge of Spider-Verse number 2, the first appearance of Spider-Gwen, another big key issue that's very expensive to obtain, even those second, third printings of this book. But if you want to pick this one up for $4 and have in your collection as a placeholder the first appearance of Gwen Stacy, And the nice thing about it is if you display your comic books, these are great because if something gets, sun damaged or if it falls off the wall and gets dinged up, you're not very mad about a $4 reprint or facsimile being affected by, damage and stuff like that. But I bet if you had a first printing of this book, you would probably be pretty upset if it got ruined in some way. So as a collector, whether you display or you just want it as a placeholder, I think that reprints and facsimiles give you a really unique option and just an easy way, an affordable way to get the books you want. The same applies for the next subcategory of collectors, which is readers. And, they get their enjoyment out of the entertainment value that they accrue from flipping through these pages, reading the stories, looking at the art, and again, not really caring about the money or the collecting aspect. They just want to consume. And the nice thing about it is that they reprint books that maybe aren't such big major keys like the last two books I showed you. Here we have a reprint of Spider-Man number 150. Now, because this is a Bronze Age Spider-Man book, it's worth a little bit, but it's not even listed on Key Collector as a key issue, and it doesn't hold. It's not like it's a $100 book or anything like that. You can usually probably find this book out in the wild for between $10 and $25, depending on condition, but who wants to spend that much if you just want to read it as compared to buying this copy for, $3 or $4 whenever it came out? It's got this interesting border here. This is called the Marvel Milestone Edition, and you'll see this for both major keys and like some medium and minor keys as well, in addition to these like milestone issues like number 150 from Amazing Spider-Man. I personally do not like this border. Not really something I'm into, so I don't collect the Marvel Milestone Editions, but I know people that will buy these up and use them as placeholders in the collection like we just spoke about, or reader copies, or display pieces in their house. And they do hold a little bit of value and go up over time, which is going to kind of influence the next couple categories that we're about to talk about. But yeah, I think, as far as the different subsections of collectors, readers are going to benefit the absolute most from reprints because they can get their hands on a book that could possibly be very expensive for very cheap, and they're able to consume that and not really worry about having the big bill at the end of the day. Next up, let's talk about investors in the hobby, people who are buying comic books to hopefully sell later for more than they bought them for. These are people who are worried about the long term, not necessarily what a book is going to do market-wise in the next couple months or couple years even. They're looking down the line a decade plus later often, possibly trying to use this to fund retirement or a future home purchase or sending the kids to college or something like that. And, as we've seen over time, this does work out for some people and it doesn't work out for others. And I'm not telling you to do anything with your own money. I just want to lay that out there. This is not financial advice by any means. But right here, we've got Detective Comics number 359, the first appearance of Barbara Gordon as Batgirl. Just an absolute major blue chip key from the Silver Age, and one that is even super relevant to today in a bunch of different franchises and different, not even just runs of comics, but also movies and television shows and things like that have come out more recently. Anyway, this is a Toys R Us promotional one, and a lot of these reprints end up being promotional either with a movie or along with a toy or something like that, or just to raise popularity around the property itself. But talking about investments, this was available at Toys R Us. I actually don't know if this one was like given away for free or if you had to purchase this for, obviously a small amount of money like these reprints usually are, but this one has grown quite nicely in value. In fact, I see it often going online for between $10 and $25 and sometimes even going up to $50 for a really high grade one, because a 9.8 recently sold for well over $200 for this reprint of Detective Comics 339. This is not the original. This is not from the 60s. This is from the 2000s, I believe, fairly recently. But yeah, it says up at the top, Toys R Us Special Replica Edition. I forget exactly what year, but nonetheless, these can be great investment pieces for the long term. If you picked up a couple copies of these when they came out and you kept them in good condition, well, they could be worth several $100s a piece now. And that just shows that even though these reprints are not the originals, they still have that growth in value sometimes. That's not always the case. Take this Tales of Suspense that we showed earlier. This one has grown in value a little bit, but not quite as much as that Batgirl. In fact, I see raw copies pretty usually going online for between $10 and $15, despite the cover price of $3.99. So it's really, between doubled and quadrupled that cover price, but it's not like 9.8s are selling for multiple hundreds of dollars. Really, you can find the 9.8s for this book for under 100 or around $100 pretty often. So not nearly as much growth as the Tech 359 here. So yeah, there is investment possibilities, but it's not always going to hit. So you got to be careful where you put your money. Last but not least, we're going to talk about the speculators, people who want to buy comics that they think have a possibility of going up significantly in value in a short period of time. Now, nowadays in the 2020s, and really over the last 15 years, most of the comic book speculation has been, pumped by the movies, by the films and the shows and all that stuff that's coming out, especially regarding the MCU. These speculators will guess, will take an educated guess. It won't be a complete shot in the dark. They're not going to just, flip through some comics and point at one and say, I think that one's going to go up in value. They'll use information from stuff that we know is coming out, stuff that has already happened, characters that have connections to each other, and they'll use that information to make an educated guess about what books could go up in value. Now, when this came out, this is Werewolf by Night 32, a facsimile edition that I believe came out in 2021. It might have been late 2020. I forget. But at that point, the Moon Knight show had already been announced. Now, this is the first appearance of Moon Knight. This book, the actual version from the 1970s, a very, very expensive book, hard to find, not only, but also just astronomically expensive at this point because of a lower print run. Werewolf by Night was not Amazing Spider-Man or X-Men. So there's going to be a lower print run of these books as compared to, the bigger titles. And not only that, but it's a number 32. It's not like the first issue or anything. Lower print run in that regard as well. So this book's hard to find. And this facsimile edition came out, like I said, about a year ago for $3.99. And I thought, I'm going to pick one up for myself. Why not? And why don't I pick another one up just in case? As some speculation. The Moon Knight show is going to be coming. It's been announced. There was some speculation at the time that Oscar Isaac was tied to it. We got that confirmation. We've gotten some snippets. We've gotten a teaser trailer. And at this point, this $4 facsimile, now a year later, is selling for $15 on eBay pretty regularly, and I've sold a couple in claim sales because I continued to pick them up for $4 whenever I could find them. You wouldn't think that these books, these reprints really hold short-term value or really could grow in a short-term time setting like that. But due to the MCU, the popularity of these shows and movies and these characters and the speculator market, it is definitely possible. Now, there is a chance that, some people are mistaking these versions for the regular versions. So it's really important to make sure you look at the cover, and we're going to get into that next because some of the covers are very, very similar. Some of them have some differences, and other ones are completely different covers, and we'll talk about that in just a second. There was tons of buzz last year when they released the facsimile edition of Ultimate Fallout 4, not only because Miles is such a beloved character at this point, but also because this cover looks extremely similar to the first printing of Ultimate Fallout 4. Because it's such a recent book, not only did it have the same kind of paper quality and things like that, but they kept almost the entire same trade dress and everything. Really, the only difference is the Marvel symbol is red instead of being like a black color at this point. They switched that as one of the changes on the cover, and the barcode is in a slightly different position. You can see it flush up against the edges of the book, whereas it's more floating towards the center of the book slightly on the original one, and the barcode is obviously different as well. Now, this caused a lot of confusion in the community, not only with people accidentally buying this one thinking that it was the real deal, but also people being a little bit shady. I'm not even gonna say a little bit, people being very shady online, posting this as the regular, not saying reprint or facsimile once in the title, maybe putting it in the description, maybe not, maybe leaving it out. Now, obviously, you can tell in the picture, but if you don't know exactly what to look for, it's pretty easy to get duped on this one. You got to make sure you're educated on these reprints and know what to look for. With some of them, it's very easy, and we'll get into those in just a second, but this one caused some trouble in the community, and I don't want to see anyone, accidentally spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars on a book that isn't worth that much, that is a reprint like this. Now, despite this being a reprint, it actually has been holding value pretty well. It almost immediately was online, selling for $5 to $7, and since then has gone up to about $10 on eBay pretty regularly. I see sales like that a lot on this book. That seems pretty fair, about double cover price or so, but the people spending hundreds on it, that is so unfortunate. I even made a post about this book circling the differences and showing people, do not make this mistake. You will get yourself in trouble. And, we don't want anyone in the community to do that, because that's not good for the community by any means. Now, there are some older books. As you can see, this Batman and Robin, number 232, first appearance of Ra's al Ghul. And this one, you can see, is significantly different, mainly because it's a $3.99 price tag. This was I believe, either late silver or early Bronze Age, probably early Bronze Age book. And, it did not have a $3.99 price tag. I believe this was a 20 center. So yeah, Bronze Age, if I remember correctly. No, this was 15. This was a 15 center. So right around that changeover time between silver and bronze. And yeah, also it's got a barcode on it. The books from that era did not have a barcode on it. This would have been early 70s, and barcodes weren't being used until, kind of, believe the late 70s, if I'm correct about that. So, for that reason, you can really easily pick this one out, despite the rest of the cover being exactly the same as the original. So you watch out for those things. Always make sure you look it over. And one good thing to do is go online and check it out, as comparing it to the actual book. Find a real one on eBay. Make sure that it lines up, and maybe even look at a couple different examples. This is one that happened to me recently. I found this in a collection that I bought, and immediate excitement comes out. This is a book that has been reprinted many, many times. I believe as early as like the 1950s, I think, was the first reprint. I know there was one in the 70s as well. This one is from 1988. But again, it holds some value because it is a reprint of one of the most iconic covers of all time, one of the most iconic comic books of all time, Action Comics #1, the first appearance of Superman. This one has, obviously a different price tag, as well as this 50th anniversary of Superman logo down here. This is from 88, like I said. And if you can see up at the top here, the cover date on this was June of 1988. Again, looks very similar, not the original. It's got these differences on the outside, and often on the inside as well. One of the big differences between what I call facsimiles and what I call reprints, facsimiles generally have the same advertisements and stuff like that inside the book, even if they're very outdated, whereas reprints will often add, more current advertisements. They make new deals with different companies who pay for the ads inside those books. That's how I really differentiate them. Also, the covers, it has to be very close like this or like the previous couple books in order for me to consider it a facsimile. So if it doesn't look almost exactly like the original, then I would consider it a reprint rather than a facsimile. That's how I differentiate. You might not agree with that, and if you don't, that is okay. There are definitely multiple opinions that are valid. Now, speaking of ones that look different on the outside, this is one example of that. Similar to the Marvel Milestone, we've got the actual comic kind of turned and shrunk down a little bit. This is for Detective Comics 38, the first appearance of Robin from back in the Golden Age. An astronomically expensive book, one that almost no one can attain, not only because it's extremely expensive, but there just aren't a lot out there. This is a great way to have a collection filler, a display piece, a reader copy, or an investment piece, maybe even possibly a speculation piece, because now that we have a Batman universe that seems to be brewing and seems to be doing well, as opposed to the rest of the DC extended universe, well, maybe there will be a Robin appearance in a future Batman movie. Fingers crossed. I think it'll be great. But anyway, back to this. This is the book. The inside is all the same, but this was a Millennium edition, I believe they called it. Yeah, it came out in the year 2000, and it was just, a reprint of some of the most important comics in DC history. First appearance of Robin definitely being one of the biggest ones. Now, sometimes they update covers as well, which I love this one. We got Fantastic Four #1, and although this has a similar cover with kind of the same scene being depicted, you can see the art on this is much upgraded, much more modernized from the 1961 original cover, which is great. Don't get me wrong. So classic, such a classic image, one that's been homaged many times, but check this out. They upgraded it. They made some changes to it to make it look a little bit more modern, and they reprinted this book. Really cool when they do that. I actually really like it. It's pretty much an homage cover, but an homage cover that is on the same book as the original cover, just a reprinted version of that. I personally really like these, and I actually collect a lot of them because they're great to have as reader copies, as cool pieces in the collection, and some of them have some really killer art that are indicative of those classic pieces of art. Now, Marvel did a lot of reprinting of their 60s stuff during the 70s and 80s and even into the present day, and they usually used a different title. So for Spider-Man, when they reprinted Amazing Spider-Man stuff, they used Marvel Tales featuring Spider-Man as the title. Fantastic Four stuff was reprinted in, I think it was Marvel's Greatest Comics, and there was a line for Avengers as well. And these were just different, ways to reprint the same stories. Now, these are a little bit different. They often had different covers. They obviously have a different numbering system. So I believe Marvel Tales 1 was like Amazing Fantasy 15, but I don't believe that Marvel Tales 2 was ASM #1. I might be wrong about that. I forget. But anyway, if you recognize this cover, now it's kind of hard to tell because it's got a different color background, but just picture this cover with a white background, and you might be imagining Amazing Spider-Man Annual #1, which is the first appearance of the Sinister Six. This is that exact same cover with a different background, but it reprints that whole book. It's got the whole book here. So if you missed out on that book in the 60s, you could have picked this copy up in, this was 1983. And this is Marvel Tales number 150. So they'd come out with a ton of stuff before reprinting this book. 149 issues, but this was annual #1, which came out in the 60s, early on in the Spider-Man run. And this is like I said, a great way to pick something up for cheap. If you don't have ASM number Annual 1, you can grab this as a place filler, as a reader copy, or even as an investment piece. Doesn't really go up too much in value, but it's about a $10 book. And some of the Marvel Tales ones are worth significantly more than that, but they're few and far between, even for some of the major keys. Like I would call this a major key for sure, but only about $10. Now, they've done this recently as well, changing covers and stuff like that. This is The Amazing Spider-Man Swing Shift #1, and this actually, it says director's cut at the bottom. This was the reprinting of the Amazing Spider-Man Free Comic Book Day book from 2007. And I believe this came out just a couple months later. And this features the first appearance of Jackpot and Mr. Negative. So this is actually a key book. Now, this version, the Swing Shift Director's Cut, whatever you want to call it, sells for about $15. The actual Free Comic Book Day version sells for significantly more at about $40, but both hold value as, the first appearance, whether you consider the Free Comic Book Day a preview, which a lot of people do, or if you consider that the true first appearance and this just being a reprint of that first appearance. Nonetheless, guys, you can see there are a lot of different types of reprints, a lot of different, visually pleasing, or in some cases, visually not pleasing, ways to present these reprints. Some of them look almost exactly the same. Some of them look so significantly different than the original, like this one, which had an all-white background with Spider-Man in a totally different position. You would not be able to tell looking at them, unless you knew what you were looking at, that they were the same book. But yeah, as you can tell, I think that they are good facsimiles and reprints for all members of the comic book community. Whether you're a collector, a reader, an investor, or a speculator, they all have a place. Not only that, but they keep the hobby healthy, which is one of the most important things. Not only do they help out the comic book companies who, are making money off of selling these reprints, as well as comic book stores, which make money off selling the reprints. That's probably more important. Comic book companies, the publishers, they do well, especially Marvel and DC, but the stores, sometimes they struggle, especially through difficult economic times. We saw in the 90s, a lot of stores shut down. We probably saw the same thing in 2008 with the collapse of the stock market. And even during COVID, I know a lot of shops that shut down and weren't able to make it through that time during the pandemic, which was really unfortunate. But these help out those comic shops, by selling these reprints. And like I said, they help out the community, new people getting into the community for the first time, buying comics for the first time. You might not be able to afford a Tales of Suspense 39. I know I can't, but I can get this facsimile edition for $4 and have a cool copy in my collection, whether to display or to read or to invest in or speculate on, whatever it may be. So I give facsimiles and reprints a 2 thumbs up. Definitely something cool to pick up, and they might be for you, they might not be for you. Not everyone in the community is going to agree with that, but hey, it is what it is. That's the beautiful thing about this hobby, is you can pick and choose what you want to buy. No one else can choose for you. That being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a little different style than I usually do, but I wanted to give out some information and talk about a topic that I haven't really talked about much on the mic. And make sure you give that video a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. Subscribe to the channel. Check us out on other social media platforms. And until next time, turn the page, wash your hands.